Hi, welcome to the tutorial on how to connect a Lance device to your Carbonite production switcher. Now, the Lance Design TDC100 is a disk controller that allows the switcher to send P-bus commands to the Lance Design TDC100, and then the Lance Design will turn that into clips, either through the BVW75 protocol or the other protocols that they support for other devices. So, first thing we need to do is configure the switcher to talk to the Lance. Now, you're going to plug the switcher into the Lance via the serial port, which is an RJ45 on the back of the Carbonite switcher. However, on the Lance, it is a DB9, so you'll have to follow the pinout that is in the cut sheet that explains how that's done. Okay, so once I've plugged in that cable, we need to go into our System, next, Device Config menu, and we're going to need to configure the serial port. Now, if I scroll the knob, I'll see that no SP. Here I've set up some AMP devices over Ethernet, but the SP or serial port has not been configured. So since this is brand new, we're going to say Add New. The slot ID is that serial port. Any of the additional numbers would be Ethernet destinations, so slot IDs for Ethernet devices. Again, you can go Ethernet to a Ethernet to serial port converter and be able to talk to the Lance that way as well if you're already using your serial port and don't want to disconnect that device. So we're going to do our serial port and the type. We're going to scroll until we get to P-bus. Then we hit next. P-bus subtype is version 1 because we've never done it. So the Lance talks baud rate of 38.4. However, the default parity that you'll find on your Lance controller, which can be configured on the Lance as well, but if we just use Lance's default settings, then I'm going to want to set this to odd parity. And then stop bits and data bits don't have to be configured. So it's just the odd parity that you want to make sure you've enabled. So I click OK. And I confirm. So now that device is set up and configured. If I scroll, I can see that I've got my P-bus. So now I have, in this case, a VTR that is plugged into input 18. So I'm going to go to my configuration, go to my input, scroll to input 18, which I haven't renamed, and I'm going to say I want to assign it to a device. I could also assign it an alpha. In this case, full white so that it would key full as opposed to key out. So our device we're going to pick is the P-bus device, and we click Next. Now the device ID is important because the Lance controller has 4 device channels, A, B, C, and D. A is by default device ID 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4. So since I'm connected to device ID A on the Lance controller, I'm going to want to make sure that I set this to ID 1. All right, now that it's set to ID 1, we hit Next, right? Because it's the device. Sorry, what we would have wanted to do is actually just scrolled here. So next up is clip option. Does roll clip work or not? I'm going to say yes for this demo because we're using just a single channel VTR, and what we're doing is being able to queue and play clips on a server like it was an attached device. For doing things like animated wipe transitions, obviously I would need more than one VTR, or I would need a device that uses the VTR protocol but had a video and alpha output, such as say a spot box. So for now, we're going to say roll clip yes, because we can show the demo using this. Pre-roll is involved with that roll clip. So when the button is enabled and lit up, it will now, for devices that have roll clip enabled and have pre-rolls, it will send the play command for those, but wait the duration it takes for that pre-roll to complete and video to actually start playing. So we're just going to set it to 20 frames so that we can see what we're talking about. you'd want this value to match your VTR or device to maximize your pre-roll. The trigger function is essentially what is the play command or trigger, the P-bus trigger that we send to the Lance TDC 100 for it to then turn that into the play command for the specific device. Now, the default on the Lance is to be in GBG mode. In GBG mode, trigger 0 is the play command. If you're running your Lance TDC 100 in Sony mode, you'd want to change this to the value to 1 so that you sent trigger 1, which would then send the play command. So since we're using the default, I'm going to stay with trigger 0. So I go ahead and click and confirm this assignment. So it's assigned. And now I can see that it's on the serial port, and I can see that 18 is P-bus and in brackets 1, so device ID 1. So now that this is done, I should be able to select that cross point. The menu will follow along, and I can even say, okay, I want register 1 to recall. Hit the recall command, and that will send the recall to the Lance, which at the same time we can see that the Lance is now shuttling through my tape to go to registers 1s in and out. Now for setting up your registers and storing them on the Lance TDC 100, I recommend you, if you haven't used it before, that you review the Lance controls manual, and it will tell you how to set up those items in the TDC 100. For now, I've set up register 0, 1, and 2 with a few timecode IDs for the sake of performing this example. Now, again, because we have that roll clip enabled and we added that functionality, when I hit the cut button, it'll send the play command, but wait that 20 frames before it actually took it to air. So that way it was already rolling and moving before we took it on air. So now I can go ahead and dissolve back out of this, and we could say, okay, well, recall register 0. So now it will shuttle off and go off to wherever register 0 was stored. And once it's queued up, right, it's ready to go. And again, because of my roll clip, it'll send the play command and then take it to air. So it's a very, very powerful feature to be able to use the roll clip as required. And then that way, I can disable it, and that, when I cut back, it didn't require the pre-roll anymore. So very good if we're running some B-roll and we are cutting in and out of some footage. So that's another example of how the roll clip functionality can really be leveraged to help support your different modes of operation. Now, if I wanted to build this into my custom control system, now this is where we can do some pretty powerful things. So here I've got my my dashboard UI screen running, so I could go in and I could pick a bank and I could pick a custom control, and I could start my editing process from inside of here as well. I can also come to the panel here and pick those same banks and custom controls. Go into my CC menu, pick a custom control, such as we'll go with sure, this one right here, and we would then start recording. So here's an example where I'm going to want to select my device in the preset bus. So it puts it into there on the next upcoming thing. I'm going to insert the recalling of register 0. So that way it will queue up my clip that's in register 0. Now I may want to insert a hold or a pause. So a hold's nice because then I can resume it as soon as the hold comes up. But since I'm going to insert a hold, what I might want to do first is make sure that my transition area is set up for how I would want this to take place. So we're going to use the double background press functionality. That's going to insert the transition clean for ME2 in this case. So it'll make sure that it transitions clean and takes any keyers that might be on air and include them in the next transition. Now, because we are inserting a hold after we get this set up, I could always override it, but this is nice to have to just do this for me ahead of time. I'm going to make sure I want to do a dissolve, and I want it to be a 10-frame dissolve. So now all of that is set up for me, and we would go back to that custom control menu, hold down the insert, and I can quick insert the hold right on the panel. Or I could have, right inside of dashboard, also have inserted an event and inserted that, that hold as well, since it's right in front of me, currently taking place. So after the hold, we're going to want to press the auto trans so that it does the auto run. Now, I can also toggle the roll clip on as well. Now, because we'd already inserted the hold, there's two ways of doing this. I could just simply say, okay, I'm going to hit the roll clip now, go back here, and we're going to insert that hold again, and I'll now remove that other hold. Or I could have gone back after we were finished, selected the hold, and then inserted before the hold the roll clip enable button as well. Different ways to edit your macros and get those custom controls defined exactly as you need. So now that the hold's inserted, I simply press the auto trans button, and it will send the play command, and it will roll the clip. Now, as you can see right there, which we'll see more when we actually go back to running it, because of the duration from when we actually inserted the register, this VTR had gone to sleep. So it's obvious that the pre-roll settings on your VTR are very important to keep track of as well. All right, so now that we're done recording all the steps that we need, I'm simply going to click here, and that will save the custom control. You also could have clicked inside of the GUI to save, or gone on the panel back to the CC menu and hit the save recording. So now when we look inside of our GUI, so on the screen you'll see the GUI, what we're going to do is I'm going to rename this, and maybe it's, we'll just call it Clip 1. So it's been renamed, and even in viewing the events, I can see that if I go back to the very beginning, so preset the source on the bus, recall register 0, set trans background to trans clear. So I can delete this event here because it's just an extra button press that's no longer needed. Set it to dissolve, 10 frames, hold, because remember we added that hold, but then we remembered we wanted roll clip on. So we'll back up, delete that event, roll clip is on, then it holds, and then when you resume it, it will run the ME2 auto. So, and that's all we need for our custom control. Now, because I want to make this for clip 2 and 3, or registers 1, 2, and 3 as well, it's much easier just to take this clip, say copy, we're going to paste it here, I'm going to rename this one clip 2, then I'm going to copy that one and paste it here, and we're going to go ahead and rename this one clip 3. So what we're going to want to do is quickly edit these. So the easiest thing really to do now would be to go ahead and select that clip 2. I can see CC clip 2, and I can edit it. And I can see, you know, first thing it does is selects the preset bus and then configures the clip. Now the reason for pressing the preset bus is obvious. We want it ready to go. Now what you can do here to make the editing process much faster is simply delete this event as well, and the clip, the register recall. So we're going to delete that. Now we're going to insert, so it's inserting before that event, and we're going to reassign the bus again so that it also helped delegate the recall menu for us. So now that the recall menu has been delegated, we change to register 1, which is where my second clip is, and we trigger the recall functionality. So now that it's recalling and zipping back, we're pretty much done. So I could stop recording by pressing the flashing custom control, or I could also just go back to the custom control menu and hit stop recording. So now we've completed that item. So let's go ahead and select clip 3, and let's do the same thing. Let's delete those first 2 events, and let's insert, and let's select it on the crosspoint bus, change our register, and go ahead and hit the recall function. And then let's stop recording. So now that we've got our custom controls, our 3 examples built, it's really easy to perform. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just put up 2 different sources. Maybe we want, for the sake of it, we'll do a DVE key, just so we can demonstrate what happens with those keyers and how that functionality takes place. So here we had an OTS, and we're going to go into our next segment, and we're going to go ahead and it's going to queue up. It's shuttling through. It's prepping my transition area for me. It's flashing to let me know it's in a held state. We're ready for our event, and as he's throwing to the event, we go ahead and away we went to dissolve to that clip. So maybe we're going to come out to camera 3, right? I get set up the way I want to be set up. Maybe it involves key 2, which is a DVE key with a loop, because he's set up to talk sports after this. So as our clip is coming to the point where we're complete with our OTS, we go ahead and we might want to first go to camera 1 clean, and then we're going to set up camera 3 with his OTS, and we're going to go into camera 3. And of course now we want to queue up our clip 2. So it goes to a different place, queues up that clip for us, and when it's ready to go, because again it's shuttling through a VTR here, not an instant access DDR. So now it's ready to go, and we just transition as need be. So all of this functionality gives us the ability to use the Lance control and integrate it with our custom control macro system. If I was going to do a wipe type transition, this functionality would be built differently. So if I wanted to build it for a wipe, let's go ahead and we'll make that example. Unfortunately, we're going to have to use a weird looking clip that makes no sense, but for the sake of argument, we'll just go with it because I don't have another option. So I'm going to pick my my custom control, so bank 4, custom control 21, and we're going to start recording. So here I'm going to want to use my highest most keyer, so I'm going to say key 4 select. I'm going to make sure that that source is assigned to it. Normally it would be an auto select key because it would have a video in an alpha, so it would do a proper keyable. So we're just going to do something a little bit different. So now that we've got that assigned, we can also use the key 4 toggle menu to toggle out of the key settings and to the device. So for this, it's going to queue up register 0, so that's the queue, and then we're going to insert our hold, because again in this case we don't know how long it's going to take to queue up. Normally it'd be instantaneous, so instead you'd use a much shorter pause. So normally I'd say, okay, it takes, if it's a DDR, it takes about 5 frames to queue, so I'd insert a pause of say 10 frames so that I know it's queued completely. And then we're going to send the trigger command because we want it to start playing, because we're not going to use the roll clip functionality. So we toggle to that menu, hit next, and now I see my trigger. So I'm going to send the trigger command, right? So it triggers, insert a pause of a couple of frames, and then we are going to transition the key on. So insert, and we want to use the tran key, and I'm going to say I want ME2 key 4, and then the on state. So that's from the panel. If I was to do this in the GUI, I could insert an event. I can, insert a trans key, pick the ME, pick the keyer I want, that I want it to go on air, and go ahead and insert that event. So that would dissolve the key on, or I could cut the key on, depends on what type of, obviously, of content I'm using. We will say that it's going to take 15 or 20 frames to get to the pause. So I could insert an event, I could select pause, and I could type in the frames or simply increase the number to what I wanted. But on the panel, it's also really fast to hold down the insert and say it's 20 frames. So I go 20 frames. Now, I never defined my transition area because I want to run this like a wipe. So I want to be able to select what I want and then hit the macro. So now that we've gotten to our undercut point, I could hit cut, or if it was supposed to be a dissolve or a wipe, you can also do the more complex elements of tying those types of transitions underneath. For this, we'll say it's a single frame cut. I would perform the cut. Then I got to wait the 20 frames on the back end for the graphic to fly out. So I would say, okay, insert another 20 frames, right? And so now it's paused for that 20 frame for it to complete, and then we can go ahead and transition the key off air. So we'll say, trans key, key 4, off air, insert, and now the key will transition off air. So we're basically at the end of that event. So I go ahead and save that, stop that recording, and now maybe I'm going to rename this. So this is now, we'll just call it wipe. So now, when we use this functionality, I can go ahead and hit the wipe button. So we want to be out of the custom control macro menu. And when we look at that clip, right, we're using register 0. So for the sake of speed, since this was running while it was on, I'll manually hit the Q on the TDC 100 so that it queues up. And so if we were to roll this, so as you saw, we used the video, but that's simulating that would be a graphic wipe or a video wipe coming through. I'm limited with only having a tape deck, but you get the idea of what it's trying to do. Okay, so setting up the Lance, very easy. Configuring the device on the switcher and programming 2 different ways in which we may use the TDC 100, either for roll-ins on full-screen videos or doing animated wipe transition type elements as well. And of course, it also applies to all other types of bumps and rollouts and things as well. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up in the forums with the community.rossvideo.com, or you can also send us emails at switchers@rossvideo.com.